I bet you're thinking, how did I do that?
You're probably wondering, how did I do that?
Well, I recorded the video and listened to it real carefully and figured it out. That's the intro, the original intro to Georgia, and it was originally done in the key of G, and that's transposed down into the key of C, because this is a good key for girl singers. I'm going to keep it simple on this video, just use a lot of root position chords, not too many open voicings. I'm going to use, because the melody's pretty low in this key, I'm going to use some sevenths and thirds in my left hand, like here on B to B minor 7 flat 5 to E. I'm just going to go like this. And then I might do the same on A to D. I copied this chart out of a pretty well-known jazz fake book, and I just transposed it down into the key of C. So the chords are exactly like what's in the fake book, but I got to say there's a lot of different ways to do this song, and some of the original changes on the definitive version, which is the Ray Charles version, some of the chords on that version are really quite nice. So we'll look at those second, and then towards the last third of the video, I'm going to do some more advanced ideas on some of the chords or maybe how to solo on this song. Okay, let's get started. Now on the B minor 7 flat 5, I've left the flat 5 out, so it doesn't really sound like a minor 7 flat 5 chord, and that's also called a half diminished chord, and the little symbol that I used on the chart there, the little line with the circle through it, that means half diminished. All right, now we get to B minor 7 flat 5, and you could just make that B minor 7 and just use a root and a seventh here, and the melody pretty much fills in everything else, or you could add that flat 5, and that'll help define that sound of a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And then here I'm just going to go to the root and the third, and my seventh is there in the melody, so everything is taken care of. No need for the fifth. All right, now we'll get to A minor, and I'll just kind of, as on D, I'll go, or E, I'll go to the root and the seventh of A minor, and I'll play the third, because that's, if you didn't play the third, you might think it was a dominant chord or something. So third, then the melody, and here it just says move the bass note down to a G, so I'll just kind of go with everything I've got there and just move the bass note down. And here is a D chord with an F sharp in the bass. So generally, a good way to approach this is just play the bass note with your left hand and the chord with your right, especially since we're getting down so low, and if I try to play that chord down there, it'd be a little muddy sounding. So I'll just play the bass note here and the chord up here, and the D's on top, so I have to have an inversion of D, like that. Okay. And then here we have F minor 7 and B flat. How can I do this? I'll do the, let's do root, seventh, and third. So go root and seventh and root and third again. I got to fill in a couple of the chord tones here. So there's the flat 3 of the F minor 7 and the melody. And then the B flat here. Yeah, that's all I need to do there. Yes, in fact I could do the sevenths with my left hand and just play the melody. But on the F minor 7th, you kind of need that third. So. And there on B flat 7th, you've got everything you need, the root, 7th, and 3rd. Once again, the 5th is not necessary, especially on a dominant chord. Then on to C major 7th. Now look, I could open this up a little bit. I got a 3rd here, so I could get rid of it down there, you see. And that gives a better sounding voicing. Here's A 7th, and here's a nice professional voicing. 1, flat 7, 3rd, and the melody, but you got so much room between here and here that we'll add the 13 and make it sound really nice. So here we go, C major 7th, A 7th with a 13, and then we got D minor 7th, here we go, root position, and I could invert this. However, it's correct, but it would sound better to put the root on the bottom, play the melody, and put the 3rd in too. You need that in a dominant chord. You always need the root, the 3rd, and the 7th. The 5 is the one you can leave out many times. There's E minor 7th. You know, I could play it with the 5, root 5, or leave the 5 out. Right. As long as you have the 3rd and the 7th, they define the chord. Then we have A 7th. You know, I could do root position like this. Or I could just go E minor, A, D minor, right here, put the melody. Here's an interesting chord, G7 plus 5. Okay, that's what the book says. This is a kind of a poor chord symbol, I would say. You know, it's a G dominant 7th chord. You could say the 5th is augmented. That's what the plus would mean. But most often, this chord would just be written as G plus 7. All right? G7 being this, and then the plus just means to raise the 5. You don't need to write 5 after the plus. And I don't like that terminology either, because most of the time they're referring to an altered chord, where you would think about the 13th of the chord and it's flatted. So it would be a flat 13, that makes it altered. And then the other tensions would have to be altered too, like for instance a sharp 9 or a flat 9. And if you listen to it, adding that sharp 9 up there, you know, sounds right. And if you went like a flat 9, that sounds good too. However, you can look at it a different way when you see G plus 7 or G7 with a plus 5. Kind of, I think it's the same thing. Think of it as an augmented chord, and the appropriate scale being the whole tone scale. Okay, that gives you not an altered 9 and not an altered, well, it does give you an altered, but it doesn't give you an altered, it gives you an unaltered 9. So it's not really an altered chord, right? Because it's based on the whole tone scale, and you don't have the flat 9 or the sharp 9, you have the regular 9. So you can't really call that altered if there's a regular 9 in there. So, you know, you can look at that chord two ways. And since it's kind of an old-fashioned song, it sounds pretty good to just think of that as an augmented chord. It's like the last chord of a blues, too. Right. But even thinking of it that way, is if you throw in some altered intervals all of a sudden, you know, it sounds pretty good. Okay, and that takes us right back to the beginning again for the second verse. And vocalists, you should know the words to this song. I'm so tired of hearing vocalists fuck this up, really. First verse, here, I'll sing it for you. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind, on my mind. Second verse, Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes so sweet and clear, like moonlight through the pines. Other arms reach out for me, other eyes smile tenderly, still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. play the second verse pretty much like the first verse. You know, if you're accompanying a vocalist and you have the melody in front of you, or you know the melody really well, the lead sheet can be really handy, because as you see what the vocalist is likely to be singing there, you can play chords that support that note, not necessarily have that note on top. In fact, you kind of want to avoid that note being the top note most of the time, not all the time. But like for Georgia, you can put the ninth on top since they're singing this. Georgia. And then right here, the melody's there, so the chord voicing could be more like that. And then you could give them that, and the melody comes in here. And you know, maybe you help them out a little bit, or just it feels right to play the melody in a few spots. The melody's there, and you're putting a third above it. They're singing the third, so you play the fifth. And here the melody is here, so play that chord as A13, and it'll support the melody nicely. And other things that you can think of, sometimes when you getting to a climax part of the song and going up to a high note or something, you can really give a nice thick chord that kind of surrounds the melody note to give the singer, a cushion, a comfort zone, make them feel supported there. So anyway, those are kind of more advanced topics. Why don't we learn the bridge of this song? There's so many ways to play this bridge too. The original Ray Charles version is nothing like the way most people play it. So let's just go with the chart here, which is not like the original Ray Charles version. So we're coming out of the second verse. Georgia on my mind. And there's a 2-5-1 going to A minor. And it doesn't have a minor 7 flat 5 here, which is interesting because you would expect that for a minor 2-5-1. Minor meaning it's going to a minor key there. It's going from B, E to A minor. That's the A minor is what makes it a minor 2-5-1. So you could easily play flat 5 there if you want. Now, the chord chart, I think most people go to D minor 7th here, but the chord chart says D minor 6th, and you can hear that it sounds right. So the melody's so low, and unless you can think of a good way to do this, play a chord to get it started, bring the melody in, and here, once again, it's so low, I'm just going to play a root with my left hand, and the chord, rest of the chord with my right hand, D minor 6th. And then back to A minor, up. Nice, and leave the 7th out once in a while, just give it a nice pure tone there. Blues in there, play your A minor chord again. There's D minor, play it as a 6th. I don't know if it says that or not, maybe it's just a D minor. All right, going to the dominant chord. All right, now, I said before, when you have that slash chord, just play that in the bass and play the rest of the chord with the right hand. Let's see if that works. The rest of the chord is A minor. It doesn't seem to work, does it? See, I would think that would be more of like an E dominant 7th chord. There's other ways to handle it too. Check this out. Yeah, that's pretty nice too. All right, A minor over G, that should be no problem. F minor 7 flat 5. Let's play it root position here. Though it sure would be nice to keep that bass note there, so a nice big voicing would help. All right. And I think, I'll do a little transcription of what I just did there so you could actually read it off the page. Maybe that might help some of you that aren't quite as familiar with all these concepts to figure out what's going on there. Okay, take the last verse here. It's pretty much the same as before. Don't put the 5 in. That's the melody. And the melody is a 13. It looks like a 6th. But you call it a 13 because it's already a 7th chord. All right, if it didn't have that 7th in there, it just was a G, like that, and you added that note, then it's a G6. But if it's a 7th chord, then you can't call that the 6th. You need to call it the 13. Okay? These are not just like rules that I'm making up. This is something that's pretty much agreed upon. There's so many amateurs in the music business, mistakes in the way people refer to things, dumbed down, simplified. And so I try to give you old school stuff here. I should probably call my channel Old School Piano. Speaking of old school here, I'm going to do a little bit on this song about the way Ray Charles actually did it. And, you know, Ray Charles was a good arranger, too, so he probably had a hand in what chords were used here. I'm pretty sure he did. So we'll start with C major. And then the next chord, instead of B minor 7 flat 5, would just be E7, but the B is still the bass note, all right? It's part of the E chord, so you could call it an E7/B. All right? And then here on A minor, he pretty much does the same kind of thing. Here, too, it goes down to G, but that's the 5th of the chord, and it's a C7th. All right, and then it's down to F, not down to F sharp with D, you know. Down to an F chord, and here's the great one that he puts in there. All right, I think it only happens in the first verse there, but it's an A flat with its 7th down here as the bass note. So you'd write it as an A flat / G flat, I guess. And I'll put a second PDF of this song with the Ray Charles chords on it. And of course, this is not exactly his chords because I've transposed this down to C. So it'll be the same chords, but in the key of C. All right? All right, so here's our E7th, and then A minor, and then this is a C7th. All right? And that melody makes it a C7th with a 13. And F6, and our nice slash chord. And I believe they go to a dominant chord here. Right? Have to alter the melody a little bit because it looks like the melody is, a minor. Even with the dominant, you could do it, but just you have to change the melody to something like 2 E's there. It's Georgia on my mind. Yeah, I think there's a lot of those kind of +5 chords in there, you know. And here it's more of a flat 9 chord. Back to the top. This is very important. That's how he does the second ending. It's not like a 2-5-1 that just sits there. It doesn't do a 2-5 into the bridge right away. It just goes like this, and it goes up to the subdominant. All right, that's the F7th, and that's the blues. If you're in C and you go up to F, and then back to C again. That's how that's a big part of the blues there. So then if you like, you can do a quick turn thing into a 2-5-1 into A minor, or you can just do the 5 chord. And here's what Ray does, which I guess is kind of like a D minor, but you're just moving the bass, the 5th of this A minor chord around. Kind of like the James Bond thing, That kind of thing, you go All right, but I got to say, very few people are going to play it that way anymore. So stick to the original chord chart here, I think is the best choice. Go to the 4 chord. Not the 4 dominant, but a 4 minor chord. And then down, that's very bluesy there too. So that's like almost an improvement upon Ray's version. And there's the subdominant again. And then here, there's a lot of ways to handle this. The original chord chart's pretty nice. Do it that way instead of keeping the put that in. It's kind of nice. I've heard it done another way too. Yeah, do another quick 2/5, and then walk it down to the F sharp minor 7. Make it a flat 5 if you want. Typical 3-6-2-5 here. Except I think most of the time that 2 chord is going to be a dominant. They call that a secondary dominant, because this is the real dominant. All right, with that +5 there. And then on the last verse, a nice way to change it up, because the last verse is usually a little more poignant than the first couple verses. So as you go down, don't go to the F this time. Go ahead and do the original change. Go down to the F sharp. You can make it a minor 7 flat 5, and then just keep it going. F minor, 3-6 out. So last verse. The end. So here's how you do it. Okay, so instead of going to the 1 chord, you go to the 3 chord, and you typically make it a minor 7 flat 5. And then you go to the 6 chord, another bar of A, 7, and then you can back right up to the D minor again. And then you put like a blues ending on, so it's D minor, that's the 2 chord. Just an old sweet song. You know, as you get there, you know, make it a diminished chord or something. And then G, you can maybe hit that and cut it. And the singer sings, Georgia on my mind. And then you put like a typical blues turnaround ending. Right, with a D flat 9 and a C 9. And then do some bullshit up here. Okay, you know, it's old school stuff, right?